evening, everyone. Welcome to our fourth workshop for GWPN for our mentors and mentees in the Leading into the Future Mentor program. Tonight, we have a very special guest, Heather Yelland. She's founder of the Elevation Company, and she's going to be speaking on the energy of innovation, moving from action to attraction. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Heather has formal training in psychology, family and systems theory and business. She's a people specialist of over 30 years experience. Her ability to get to the heart of what drives and motivates people, what limits them and prevents them from realizing their fullest potential, has been the foundation of her work in Australia, New Zealand, the UK, USA, and Asia. She's humorous, energetic, powerful, inspirational, challenging, insightful, intuitive, and a concise speaker and facilitator. She has that unique ability to engage with us individually and in large groups and addressing the needs of the group. So we are very, very lucky to have Heather with us, and she has been part of the GWPN Assembly since we started speaking and inspiring us. So over to you, Heather. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne. And it's lovely to be here with you all. And it's lovely to connect with those of you who can't join us tonight, but will be listening to this recording a little bit later on. I feel like I need to offer an apology, which is not the normal way that I would usually start a speaking gig. But I live in regional Victoria. We've had, like many of you, a lot of rain. And I have a very dodgy internet connection. So the first thing to know is I'm actually in my lounge room. So that's putting me a little bit closer to the modem, but hopefully I won't drop out this evening. But if I do, if you usually wait, count to 5 or so, I reappear. But it's lovely to be here with you tonight in thinking about the sorts of things I might want to share with you tonight. I was kind of thinking about some of the experiences I've had with work. Get there. And I think there's one thing that kind of stands out for me, and that is that I've not yet met anyone involved with that group who is all about themselves. So I'm working from an assumption tonight that most of us are really good givers, very good service-orientated people whose values are very much about contribution and connection and those sorts of things. Which is wonderful. And I too am one of those people, and I very much enjoy that aspect of my life. However, I'm now old enough to realize that giving without receiving becomes a little bit of a catch, a little bit of a pitfall. So some of what I'm sharing tonight is going to support you to reflect on yourself and the way that you choose to live in a slightly different way. I'm going to share my screen. I have got a PowerPoint presentation. I'm a bit of a shocker for not sticking to script. So we'll use it for the moment just so that I can walk through a few things with you. But there's every possibility that I'll just toss it at some point and not pay any attention. So the first thing that I wanted to share with you is myself and our team has worked with a number of clients. And I just wanted to show you, this is what we call the credibility slide. So the fact that Anne likes me or thinks that I'm great shouldn't necessarily mean that I'm an awesome person. So I thought it might be useful just to share some of the places that we have worked. Above the line, that's some of our clients, either current or past. Below the line are some of the places that we have appeared in the media. But I guess that it doesn't really matter what we're doing. All of us are doing it around full engagement of our heart. And I think that's the first thing that I want to focus on tonight, because really when you think about being in attraction, when you think about having an energy that brings good things toward you, It is very much informed by the extent to which you are aware of your own heart, aware of your own desires, aware of your own needs, and able to recognize the great joy that comes from being able to serve others from that place of heart. And there's a difference, as the recipient of kindness, we can feel the difference when people are kind because that's what's in their heart to be shared, or whether they're kind because they think they're going to win some brownie points, or they're going to be noticed, or, that somebody's going to see how much they've donated and they're going to go, oh, wow, you're amazing. So it's very much, from my perspective, it's very much a case of really doing that in a way that is in alignment with what you value, and keeps you connected to your heart space as much as you possibly can. The first thing I want to talk about is what I call the action attraction continuum. There are so many elements of life that I think draw us into action. For those of you who have children, you will know this only too well, even if, like mine, they're quite grown up now. But if they're not grown up now, for example, Afa is trying to participate in this call and cook her children dinner and probably assist with the homework and all the other things that kind of go on. So, there's much about how we live our lives, particularly as women, I think, that draw us into action. The problem with action is that it is often very much informed by us asking how questions. So I've got a webinar tonight, but I need to feed the kids and we need to do the homework and I need to clean the uniforms for tomorrow. And then I need to iron the uniforms for tomorrow. And, how am I going to get all that done? The challenge for me is that whenever we ask a how question, what happens is we amplify the energy behind the question. I'm going to say that again because this is an important point. Whenever you ask how, you amplify the energy behind the question. So if you're asking, how do I solve this problem? How do I fix this thing? How do I deal with all of these demands? And that question is coming with an energy of struggle or scarcity or deprivation or lack or challenge. Asking how just makes all of those things bigger. And we start to drown in it, and we feel a sort of I don't know, I like to call it overwhelm, I think. We just feel like, there's so much going on, I can't stand this. And I've had a little bit of that. I was chatting with Anne before we started the call tonight about one of our clients has had a little bit of well, they called it a crisis, but I think I need to talk to them about how we define crisis. But a lot of my time and energy and one or two of my senior consultants' time and energy has been rediverted to assist this client. And the client is just running in circles talking about how much of a problem things are. And in so doing, they've completely disconnected from their capacity to come up with really innovative solutions. They can't elevate their thinking. There's a famous quote from Einstein who says, not word for word, but take it on principle, who said, we cannot solve a problem at the same level of thinking at which we've created it. So we have to elevate our thinking. We have to pull ourselves out of the problem in order to be able to see things from a different perspective. The nature of being in action, it's kind of like looking down a tube. And all you can see is what's at the end of the tube. So if we call this the problem tube, you're looking down the problem tube, there could be all sorts of wonderful innovations and ideas and people and resources and possibilities out here, but you can't see it because you're quite foveal, you're quite focused on the problem itself. Now, think about it in this way. When you're in action, there is a degree of motivation. So we've all had that experience of, maybe we're sitting in front of a screen and we've got to write something and it's a blank screen and our mind goes blank and we're like, and the energy leaves the experience. And then you think, I'll just get up and go and make a cup of tea. So you go off and do that and you come back and somehow magically the motion of actually making some sort of movement, taking some action, causes some kind of increase in motivation. Okay, well, now I can do this. Well, let's just have a go. Let's just make a start, something like that. So if you think of this as being a cycle, the action causes some kind of motivation. The more motivated you are, the more action you feel you're able to take. The more action you take, the more motivation, the more action. And so on it goes. Now, you might think that's great because at least I'm doing something. I'm taking some kind of action. What I tend to find is if you stay in that action motivation cycle for long enough, you get drawn into what we call the action vortex, the black hole of activity that kind of sucks us in, such that you have a really busy day and you sit down at the end of the day and you think, what did I achieve today? Nothing. But you've gone flat out all day. You know, I mean, you're laughing, Nadia, but you're laughing because it's so true. Like, we all do it. And I'm just as susceptible to it as the next person. Yeah. What we need to do is we need to pull ourselves back from there. And we need to view things from a different perspective. So think of it as if you move across to the other side then and looking at the attraction and inspiration. The difference here is we're not asking how. We don't ask how questions. We ask why questions. Okay, so I've got a speaking gig tonight, but I need to cook the children dinner and we need to do the homework and I need to clean the uniforms and I need to iron the uniforms. And instead of going, how do I get all this done? You stop and you go, okay, why is this important to me? Well, I love my Global Women's Peace Network family. I love my children. I like them to go to school being, you know, clean and beautiful. And suddenly you connect to those things of an emotional nature or almost a spiritual nature. And what happens is your perspective gets elevated. Your eyes even, if you do this, if you've got a 4 or a 5-year-old at home, ask them to go and get their favorite toy and then say to them, why is that your favorite toy? And they'll go, because daddy gave it to me. Really? And what else? Because it's cuddly. Their eyes will actually look up. It's part of what we do when we seek inspiration. We go to something bigger, something greater than ourselves. When you ask a why question, you connect to the emotion of why that thing matters to you. And it takes you out of your head and drops you back into your heart. So when you're in that space, you're much more in attraction. Again, think of it as a cycle rather than an arrow. I probably need to change the graphics on my PowerPoint presentation. But if you think of it as a cycle, when you're in attraction, you're inspired and you're inspiring. When you're inspired and you're inspiring, you're in attraction. The more attraction, the more inspiration, the more inspiration, the more attraction. I call that flow. And when you're in flow, great things happen. Anything can happen, but great things tend to happen. The right people just show up. The right solutions drop into your mind. The right resources are able to be secured without any hassle whatsoever. These are the people that we tend to call lucky. And lucky in that they've got the right job and they've got the right staff and they've got the right clients and their clients pay their bills. These are the people that are so lucky they win the chook raffle on a Friday night. You know, they're just, everything that they touch turns to gold. But the real issue here is not so much that they're lucky. They create their own luck by staying connected to their heart and the energy of why, not the energy of how. And I'm going to sort of present it to you differently in a moment in more of a sort of a pyramid shape and really start you thinking about the energy that you send out when you're in that action, really, really busy, you know, just got to get it done, got to get it done, got to get it. It's really frantic and it kind of makes you want to go, oh, and lean away. Whereas when you're in attraction, there's a calmer, more centered, peaceful sort of energy. So I just wanted to give you that frame up to begin with. My golden rule, don't ask how, ask why. Golden rule number 1. The second thing to acknowledge is that there are different responses to the process of change. And I think it's worth mentioning this because we are literally living in a period in history that I think 10, 20 years from now, people will look back and go, that was mad. In fact, we don't even have to wait too long to be able to look back and go, that was mad. You know, it is the reality is we are each living in an environment of constant and rapid change. In fact, in consulting, we call it the CRC era, the constant and rapid change era. And it's important for us to understand that there are some fundamental elements to how change occurs. So if you look to the left-hand side of the screen there, think about it in this way. Whenever there is mayhem, when there's lots of change and lots of things going on, we feel a sense of mayhem. It feels like it's out of control. It rarely is, but that's how it feels. It feels like we're in mayhem. Whenever we're in mayhem, we're in moaning. And people will be, we moan about the government, we moan about the healthcare system, we moan about the lockdowns, we moan about the economic impact on our businesses, et cetera, et cetera. We're moaning, moaning, moaning. And importantly, particularly when we're women, most of us are quite skilled in moaning at ourselves as well. Anytime there's mayhem and moaning, you can be sure there's mistrust. So whether it's I don't trust myself very well right now, or whether it's I don't trust the government, or whether it's I don't trust my employers, or whatever it is, there will be an element of mistrust. So you've got the mayhem, the moaning, and the mistrust. And fundamentally, everything just seems messy, which is where the overwhelm feels like it's coming from. When we recognize that messy is not necessarily a state that is consistent and constant, we have two options. We can either choose to go back to fear and cycle through there again. The greater the fear, the more mayhem, the more moaning, the greater the mistrust, the messier things seem. Cycle back again, same thing. All it does is elevate the fear to the point where we end up playing for what we call the blame team. However, if we get to the messy and say, okay, the messy is an indication that something needs to change, or I've lost contact with my own center and I feel a bit out of balance, then you can stop and say, but I'm a courageous person, or I have faith that everything will change and work out for the better. So then you simply calmly stop in the middle of the messy and say, okay, this is a point of another breakthrough for me. If you understand that that's what the messy is all about, then you go looking for a method. And the method is just a way of making sense of the messy. All of us have had that experience where everything feels completely out of control and completely overwhelming. And then somebody says to us, why don't you write a list of all the things you have to achieve? And you're writing and you're writing and you're writing. And you look at your list and you go, oh, 6 things. And there must be more. That doesn't seem overwhelming, like 6 things on the list. But when those 6 things swim around out of control inside your head, peppered with fear and uncertainty and fatigue and all the rest of it, those 6 things seem bigger than Ben-Hur. When you write them down, you go, oh, 6. Wow, is that all? And suddenly that method, even something as simple as writing it down, makes the messy create a completely different meaning. When there's a different meaning, there's the possibility for magic. And it would make my nice PowerPoint presentation a little bit lopsided, but the other side of the magic for me is the possibility of what I call miracles. And they happen every day in my world. And they happen largely because I stay in that heart connection, in that expansive energy that, yes, it makes a greater contribution and it supports and helps other people, but importantly, it also feeds me. If when things get messy, I lean on my faith or my courage or my sense of this too shall pass, and I just look for a method that helps me make sense of it, so I've got different meaning and therefore different choices, and therefore I could create magic. If I do that often enough, I end up playing for what I call the ownership team. Then I can take ownership for how I respond, no matter what the situation is. So I don't have to be sucked into somebody else's vortex of action. I can stay connected to my heart and centered in myself, and if you like, kind of more present to my own spiritual life. And if there's nothing for any of us to do right now, It is to keep our own energy elevated, because there's so much crazy stuff going on in the world. If you get caught in that vortex, you will be sucked into the mud. And nobody is helped by that. The next thing I want to do is to challenge you to think about why you are here. And some of you will go, well, what do you mean, Heather? Do you mean like, why am I here in this conversation? Or why am I here in Australia? Or why am I here in this point in history? Doesn't matter. All points lead to, all roads lead to Rome, or in this case, all roads lead to the heart. So why are you truly here? And I'm actually going to ask you to take a moment. If you have a pen and paper, write it down, because it's good to reflect on later on. But if you don't, feel free to mute yourself and just talk to yourself about it. Alpha, that may not work for you because the kids will think you're going crazy. But just have a conversation. Yeah, why am I here? Why am I here? Well, I'm here because I want to share greater love. Okay, great. So why is love important to me? Well, because I think that that's the energy that makes the world turn. Okay, and why is energy important to me? Because I think it's the essence of what creates human relationship. Okay, great. And why are relationships important to you? Well, because they bring us into connection with ourselves, connection with the universe, and connection with others. There's my big why. And my big why is actually connection. You know, in some ways I could say at an action level, I need this conversation tonight like I need a slap in the head, because this is my second speaking gig for this week. I've got another one tomorrow night, and I've had a very, very busy day. But I love to do it because it brings me into connection. It brings me into a different connection with my own heart. It brings me into a different connection with the Global Women's Peace Network family. But it also brings me into a different connection of the possibility of what can be created when we all turn up in our why, connected to our heart. And that for me is that's step one of world peace. Really, that's world peace, one heart at a time. So I just want to give you a moment, and we're operating on Anne's Zoom system, so I didn't want to run the risk of putting some music through the system that didn't work out, because that's just a technical faux pas. So I have got some music here, and I'm going to play some music for a moment, and I'm going to give you a minute just to think about why am I here, and unpack it a little bit. Okay, now before I ask if anyone would like to share their big why, and I am prepared to play Dob in a caller if you want to be too shy to speak, But before I ask you to share, I just want you to stop and take a deep breath. And just feel how connected you are to your own body, to your own heart. Has reflecting on that question, why am I here? Has that shifted your sense of connection? Yeah, you're all nodding. Thank you. I appreciate the feedback. I actually think I have no scientific proof at all. But I've literally done this with hundreds of thousands of people all over the world, and I am yet to meet anyone, and I mean anyone, even the people who go to these sorts of events just to argue with the speaker. I am yet to meet anyone who has said asking that question makes me get really heady and intellectual. You know, the reality is it does cause us to drop into our heart, and a heart-based energy is far more powerful than a head-based energy. There's plenty of research that demonstrates that. Go and have a look at anything Brené Brown. The woman was a researcher for 20 years and no one even knew her. Well, very few of us knew her name. And then she does one TED talk on vulnerability and bam, now she's an international sensation. She took 20 years to become an overnight sensation, by the way. So, you know, the reality is matters of the heart matter. And we live in a world that encourages us to be conceptual, intellectual, secular, divided, competitive, all of these things. You know, I went to the gym this morning, and the guy who runs the gym was there doing a personal training session with another person. And the fellow said to me, oh, how are you going with your ratings? I said, oh, well, I'm an A+. No, I don't. I'm sorry, sir. I don't know what you're talking about. And he said, oh, aren't you in the monthly competition? And I said, oh, no, I don't even know about the monthly competition. He said, oh, that's what the sandwich board out the front was saying. You know, we're all in a competition to see how many times we can come during the month. And I thought, when did everything in life become a competition? When did I don't go to the gym to win some prize based on how many times I go. I go to the gym because it sets me up well for the day. You know, I meditate because it sets me up well for the day, not because somebody's going to come and pin a medal on me to say, great job, you've meditated 28 days out of the month. Like, no. It's very much about what works for me, what sets me into my heart. But I do encourage you to take that question away and keep asking it. Write it on the toilet paper somewhere. Write it on the back of the door. Write it on the mirror in your bathroom. Like, do it somewhere that every now and again you're going to run into it and you're going to stop and think about, well, why am I here? Because it is not possible to entertain that question and stay in your head, even though it is an intellectual question, in a sense. So once you've got really clear, exercise, yay, balloons. Once you've got clear about your why, then you're connecting to a completely different energy, and it's very much a heart energy. And I wanted to talk to you about what we call the waterline construct. Our skills and our behaviors are really obvious. There are certain things that you know about me already because it's really obvious. So I can speak. I'm kind of animated, particularly when I'm online. I'm actually animated everywhere, but I'm particularly animated when I'm online because otherwise things seem so boring, right? You're there looking at a screen, I'm here standing in front of one, and I'm looking at a little white spot up there. You think I'm looking at your face, right? So I want it to be much more animated. Those are behaviors, but they don't tell you very much about who I am or what I stand for. They don't tell you what's behind my animation or my capacity to speak. That's the stuff that is below the waterline. It's our values, it's our beliefs, it's identity, it's traits, it's our spiritual perception, our sense of who we are. And so what we want to do is we want to tap into what's beneath the waterline. When we're in action, we're in behaviors and skills, and we go. When we're in attraction, when we're clear about why we're doing what we do, We tap into or we access the things that are beneath the water, and we bring those things forward in a way that helps us to engage more deeply with the experience of life. The human experience is wired for connection and belonging. When we're intellectualizing, we cannot connect or belong at a deeper emotional or spiritual level. So I just want to talk about this notion of beliefs. I think of them as the glasses through which we view our world, ourselves and the world around us. So it's really important to know what's the color of your lens. But equally, it's important to understand our beliefs are the lenses through which we see the world, but the lenses on our face are about largely of our own doing. So I could look at you here tonight and think, oh, aren't they lovely? Haven't they got beautiful faces? And wouldn't I wish that I was in their lounge room right now and we could do this over coffee? Well, actually, women of my age don't drink coffee anymore. We could do this over a stinging nettle tea. Oh, God. Anyway, no, we'd probably do it over coffee. I prefer that. We could do it that way, but the reality is we can't. We're all spread out all over the place. But what a gift this is that we've got the opportunity to come together in this way. Or I could look and think, oh my goodness me, I've gone to all the trouble to put this presentation together and I've turned up, there's only half a dozen of us on the call. Where's everybody else? What was the point? So we might call those my crap glasses, pardon the French. If I put my crap glasses on, then it doesn't matter how lovely you are. It doesn't matter how grateful you might be to be here tonight. I'm going to look at you through my lens, and my lens says this is all crap. Yeah. The thing that's important about that is that I choose my lens. Okay, so COVID was horrible. We all got locked up. We all came out and behaved like caged animals. Well, I'm talking about those of us who at the time were living in Melbourne. But, maybe, just for 3.5 minutes up there, Jean, you got locked up for, 3.5 minutes. But down here in Victoria, it was like living in the state of detention, really. And when we got let out, we were a little ropeable. So we were very aggressive and we grumped at each other. And I thought, you know what? There are generations that have gone before us who, instead of storming Gallipoli, would love to have been locked in their own houses with everything that they needed pretty much at their fingertips, with a forced period of rest and reflection. Choose your glasses, folks. Choose your glasses. And that's the key thing to be aware of when it comes to reflecting on our beliefs. There's one tiny challenge, and we don't have time to go into it tonight, but I invite you to think about, what are the limiting beliefs that I hold? And how do they influence the color of my lens and the choices I therefore make? One of the limiting beliefs I hold, because my mother and my mother's mother and my mother's mother's mother, and I'm sure for generations way back, we have been putting everyone else first. Raise your hand if you're a fellow sufferer. Yeah, thank you for your honesty. I appreciate it. We do. We put everyone else first. Everyone, the kids, the partners, the husbands, the work colleagues, whoever it is, everyone, the sick lady down the street, the dog next door, for goodness sake, we put everyone first. And then hopefully with that tiny little sliver of 2.5 minutes that we've got available to us at the end of the day, we slump into a couch and we go, oh my God, I need a cup of tea. And we call that time to ourselves. I don't think so. Realistically, you cannot give from an empty tank. You cannot give from an empty tank. So rule number 2, that's rule number 4. Fill your own tank first. And I know it sounds crazy, but I have 8 children. And I always used to get on a plane and listen to the hostess. Sorry, they're not hostesses anymore. They're now flight attendants. Saying, and please make sure you fit your own oxygen mask before assisting others. And I was like, lady, you're crazy. If one of my kids was here, there is no way I would put my own oxygen mask on before I'd put one on my children. And then I thought, oh, what if all 8 of them were here? I'd be dead by the time I got to the end of the 8th. Pretty good chance. So how would I decide who to put the oxygen on first? Okay, well, there's a couple of them that are giving me no trouble, so I'd start there. There's a couple of them that are annoying the skin off me and taking way too much money from me, so I'd make them last. Like, you know, in a sense, it's crazy. It's crazy to even think about it. But then I started thinking, well, hang on a minute. How come my kids are more important than these people sitting around me? Because they're someone's child, or brother, or husband, or wife, or father, or cousin, or neighbor, or whatever, or boss. Yeah. So I started to think differently about it. And I know I was working past generations of a family script that says a woman's job is to put herself last. But I started to disrupt that, because the only way I can give to you is if I've given to me too. So today, knowing that I had this opportunity tonight, I took myself out for coffee. Don't tell anyone, but I did actually drink coffee. Took myself out for coffee and I got a haircut, because I thought I look so woolly, I can't turn up tonight or Anne's going to say, where's Heather? So I went, thank you, Ed. Yes, it is worthy of an applause, because that's very unusual for me on a working day, you know. But if we're not prepared to challenge our own beliefs, our limiting beliefs, then all we're doing is passing the problems from one generation to the next. There's a famous story about a little girl who was watching her mum cut the lamb leg in half to put it in the oven for Christmas dinner. And this little girl said to her mum, "Mummy, why do you cut the lamb bone in half before you put it in the oven?" And the woman said, "Oh, I don't know, sweetheart. I do because Nana always did. Go and ask Nana why she did." "Nana, why do you cut the lamb leg?" "Oh, well, I do because my nan did. My mum did. Go and ask great-grandma why she did it." So the little girl goes to the great-grandmother and says, "Great-grandma, why does mummy cut the lamb leg before she puts it in the oven to cook it for Christmas dinner?" And the grandma said, "Oh, well, sweetheart, I used to do that because when I first married your great-granddad, we only had a very small oven. And to fit the leg of lamb into a dish in the oven, I had to cut the bone." So here we are 4 generations later, ladies. 4 generations still cutting the bone just because our mothers did. So the question for you to contemplate is, what is my lamb leg bone? What am I doing just because that's what my mother did? You know, if it works for you, great, go ahead and do it. But at least ask yourself the question, am I doing this because it makes sense to me? Or am I doing this because I've been trained to do it? Why am I doing this thing this way? And see if you can fish out those limiting beliefs, because knowing what they are and challenging them and disrupting them can be incredibly freeing. And importantly, it gives you a much greater choice about the kind of lens that you choose. The limiting beliefs produce limiting results. And you can usually feel it when the limiting beliefs turn up. You feel scratchy, you're a bit irritated, maybe you've got a bit of a headache or a kind of a dull head, you can't concentrate. Things that normally don't worry you at all really annoy you. I was here at home a couple of days ago and it was such a beautiful day. I had the front door open, but I had meetings all day and I had people making demands of me all day. And I don't have a screen on my front door, so a blowfly got in. Honestly, if he was 10 kilos worth of blowfly and he went around the house with a tennis racket, he couldn't have annoyed me more, because I was overwhelmed and I was looking at the blowfly through the, "Oh, you're a problem I don't need" sort of glasses, right? So be aware of what those limiting beliefs are and be aware of how you look and feel and what you do and be when they show up. One of the beliefs that I want to challenge you about is a belief that socially we hold about vulnerability. This word actually means a state of complete openness, to be completely open, unguarded. But the term has been militarized to mean a place of weakness. So we want to hit the enemy where they're most vulnerable, where they're most guarded, unguarded, I should say. But most of us don't like the experience of our own vulnerability because we think it's our place of greatest weakness. And I am a big fan of disrupting the hell out of that very limiting belief, because I think of vulnerability as being the place of greatest strength. And I want to give you an example. One of the businesses with whom we consult, the managing principal after 15 years is retiring. And he announced that to the principal group 6 weeks ago. But yesterday he announced it to the whole staff. There's about 200 staff in his business, or the business that he's a part owner in. And he rang me the day before and he said, how am I going to approach this? Like, I just want to be able to say, look, this is it. And this is what I've decided. And this is why I've decided. And this is who's going to be taking over. And, I just want to give them the facts. And I was a little disrespectful and I went, yeah, just give them the facts. Don't feel anything, because if they're terrified, that's their problem. If they're sad about that, that's their problem. You don't want to feel anything. No. I was ever so slightly sarcastic, I'll admit it. And he said, oh, what are you saying? And I said, I think that's ridiculous. How do you actually feel about this decision? And he said, well, to be honest, a couple of days ago, I felt great about it, but thinking about what I've got to do tomorrow, I'm pretty sad. I said, right. So here's what I'd do. I'd go in there and say, hey, you guys, I've got something really important to tell you, but I need you to be gentle with me because I feel really sad. Oh, I don't know about that. He said, no, I don't know. That feels like that big V. That's his way of saying, I don't like vulnerability. He calls it the big V. And I said, yeah, have a go and see what happens. Anyway, the next morning he rang me and he said, oh God, I'm going to cry. I said, great. That's what a good leader would do, because some of those kids will cry. Some of them will be incredibly worried. Some of them will be devastated. Some of them will be rubbing their hands together going, great, get him out, next. But most of them will be very sad. Anyway, I texted him last night and I said, so how did we go? Did we avoid the big V? And he just texted back and said, don't even speak to me. I cried like a baby. So I texted back and said, I'm so proud of you right now. And he texted back and said, I'm over you. I'm never speaking to you again. And then rang me an hour later. But it was just lovely, because he said it was really scary and it hurt my heart so much. But he said they were so lovely. And they cried, and then I cried, and then they came and talked about why they were sad, and they told me about the difference I'd made in their working lives as well as their personal lives. It was a beautiful, powerful moment. But it happened because he dared to be in his own vulnerability. When I checked in with him this morning, I said, how are we feeling today? He said, exhausted and really powerful. And I wrote back and said, of course, the powerful is because you dared to be vulnerable. The exhaustion is the effort it took to fight it. So I just invite you to kind of reflect on that and think about that. Do you naturally and comfortably engage with your own vulnerability? Or do you see it coming, smell it coming, and run like hell? Because it takes a hell of a lot more energy to avoid it than it does to be in it. The other thing that I just want to make a quick link. This is a little sort of side piece, but when we embrace our own vulnerability, we are much more open to receiving support from others. Each of us knows the joy of giving to someone else that we can assist. But do we really know the joy of affording somebody else the opportunity to give to us? Well, that was rather an uncomfortable question, wasn't it? But think about that, because if you're the one that's always running around caring for everyone else, are you allowing people to care for you? Because that takes vulnerability. And if you won't allow others to give to you, then I'd question whether or not you have a right to give to them, because it's an unequal relationship. Oops. The elevated energy framework, I just want to talk about this. As I said to you before, I'm going to take this side-by-side sort of action attraction. Oh, no, sorry, I'm on Zoom. Action attraction thing. And I want to sort of just tip it sideways. So think about basal energy, which is energy that comes from a base place. It is very, very heady. It is the action attraction vortex in operation. It is very consumptive of your energy. When you're in this place, you're driven by fear, you're driven by scarcity, you're driven by survival, really, and you're very concerned about how can I fix it? How can I slow things down? How can I possibly deal with everything I've got to deal with? How can I get past this feeling of overwhelm and fear? It's very how driven. And importantly, it connects to our negative beliefs about ourselves. Now, what I want you to understand is that energy goes outward. But the nature of the energy created from a basal place is one of repulsion. Even when the universe goes, oh, hey, Heather, here's a great opportunity, resource, person, idea, solution that I'd like to give you. It's almost like you've got your guard up, ping, 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 flick away all of those wonderful things that the universe wants to provide for you. You don't need them. You've got this. You're action woman. You could wear your undies on the outside and your cape on your back. You know, like it's just a crazy way of operating, but that's what happens. It's almost as if we repel the very opportunities, people, resources, gifts that would help to elevate us out of that murky water. And even though it is the broadest part of the pyramid, I want you to get that when you get stuck down there, the energy is not one of contribution. The energy is one of consumption. It's very absorbing. It drains you. It drains the people around you. I'm actually working with a young woman at the moment who I think is used to living her life at about 750,000 kilometers an hour. And I'm old enough to know there is no joy in that. There's no reward in that. I possibly recognize it from my early 20s or perhaps into my 30s. I think I was building an empire at one time. And now I've grown up just a little bit and wised up a hell of a lot. And I realize that I get a hell of a lot more done being in attraction than I do in action. Now, I know that doesn't make any sense, but what I do is I work smarter, not harder. Yeah, that is an elevated energy. So at the top of the pyramid, it's all about heart. It's all about flow. It's all about our own unique contribution, our unique point of inspiration. We are naturally in attraction. The good things come to us even when we didn't know that we needed them. We don't have that consumptive energy. We have this radiating sense of abundance. We thrive. There's a very generative aspect to it. And importantly, the research tells us when we're in an elevated energy state, we're actually far more resilient and we have a capacity to tap into a far greater level of grit. And in fact, if you go to, I've just lost her name, go to YouTube and type in TED Talk on grit and she'll come up. It'll come back to me before the end of this conversation, I'm sure. But it's wonderful. And she talks about the fact that grit is the fundamental essence. It's the energy that is in resilience. And no matter what else is going on in the world right now or what we need, we sure as hell need as much pardon me, resilience and grit as we possibly can. So think of it oversimplified, but think of it in this way. When we're in the heart, there's a natural radiating energy and that puts us in attraction. When we're in the head, there's a natural radiating energy of repulsion and the energy itself is consumptive. So I can achieve an incredible number of things when I'm coming from a heart energy, but at the end of the day, I feel fed by it, not exhausted by it. When I'm in the head energy, I probably don't achieve as many things as I would if I was in the heart energy, even though I've worked like this all day and I sit down at the end of the day and I'm exhausted. So it's just an invitation to really think about Duckworth. Thank you very much, Nadia. Yes, Angela Duckworth. She's great. She's a little pocket rocket. She makes me tired just watching her, actually, but she is amazing. She's an incredible speaker and she's got wonderful material. So I want you to really think about this. I want you to think about, how do I make sure I'm in that elevated state? In fact, let me do that again, because that was a terrible question. Do not ask that question. Ask yourself, why do I want to be in this elevated state? What is different for me when I'm in that elevated state? And just notice what happens. Notice the opportunities that come along. Notice the possibilities that show up. Notice how easily you come up with solutions to even the grandest of problems. And notice how much less energy you require. Importantly, notice how other people want to be around you when you're like that. Oh, gee, I'm only laughing because I recognize the opposite. So, a little bit of time for reflections and questions. I would love you to open your microphones and throw some questions out, because there's a very good chance that if you've got a question about it, so does other people on the call. And no doubt the people listening to the recording later on will be grateful for it as well. Nadia. How are you? Oh, now, Nadia, I can't, can anyone hear Nadia's sound? No, I can't, Nadia. I'm aware that Afa has unmuted as well. I might just come back to you, honey, because there's obviously an issue with your sound. Afa, my love, were you going to ask your question?
Yes, I'm going to be going to the quieter area. I've heard everything while I'm speaking. So I think I should be in the other place.
So you don't have to have the girls as an audience in the background.
Yeah. Thank you. It was a really good presentation. And one of the things which I really enjoyed is that you have really handled our day-to-day challenges and issues as women, and being in different leadership role or work role or whatever role that we are doing. So you've really broken it down really, really nicely for me, especially also, I'm sure for others.
Thank you for indulging me, allowing you to use our example of someone who's trying to do 50 things at once.
You know, how's the feeling, but I was just trying to shush them. I said, let me listen with my hand. Anyways, one of my questions is, how do you stay at the elevated framework all the time?
Yes.
As in human beings, we have, in a day or in an hour, maybe we have different things coming up, and how we get. So how to really keep ourselves at that elevated
level?
Yep.
Yeah. Brilliant question.
Thank you.
I want to respond to that question by saying don't. And of course, if I was a real Zen master, I'd be saying, well, you just meditate and you stay there. The reason I'm saying don't is because life is about contrasts. I have times when I'm chaotic and I'm overwhelmed and I'm grumpy and I'm short-tempered, all of those things. I have times like that. The difference is when I'm like that, I embrace that. Most of us, when we're like that, fight that. And there's the famous saying in physics, that which we resist persists. So it is in our emotional life as well. If we resist our overwhelm, it will persist. If we resist our grumpiness, it will persist. So when I find myself being grumpy, one action that I take, Afa, and look, it may not work for you, honey, but let me just sort of throw out the ideas that I have, is I'll go, oh, hello, grumpy. Welcome. I haven't seen you for a while. You haven't been around lately. What's going on? What's happening, grumpy? Tell me what it's like to be you. And I just embrace the grumpy, because it's most probably some expression of my inner child not getting what I wanted when I was a little person. So here's my opportunity to turn toward little me and say, hey, what's going on for you? So action number one, embrace it, whatever color it turns up in, whatever attitude it turns up with. Because when you embrace it, you can discover what the lesson is. When you resist it, you stay in relationship with the resistance, and the negative energy, and there's no learning behind that. The second thing that I do is I do daily practices that work for me. Sometimes that is meditating, often, probably 5 days a week, that is going to the gym or going out walking. Daily, pretty much, I will put either my hands or my feet in the soil. Gardening, playing with the plants, singing to the plants. I'm sure my neighbors think I'm crazy, and I'm okay with that. But I'll go out and stand in the garden and just sing in the garden, you know. Or I might go for a walk to somewhere I've never been before and turn it into an adventure. So it's something that sort of expands my awareness of my environment, something like that. Sometimes I read, particularly if I'm having a little bit of a challenge around quieting my mind. I think if I try and meditate when I'm trying to quiet my mind, but my mind is, you know, like a glass jar full of blowflies, that doesn't work for me. So it's better if I do something that is meditative in nature, but that has movement involved with it. So I will get out into nature. I will hug trees. I will go for a walk and take little pieces off other people's plants that are protruding out into the street and bring them home and plant them in the garden. I do actually have green fingers, thank God. Sometimes I will actually just, I'm a great one for little things that will make me kind of stop and go, oh, how much? Like on a scale of 1 to 10, how much am I in my heart right now? And I know that's an intellectual question, but it just causes the kind of reflection that makes me go, actually, not very much. Yeah. I think the other thing that helps for me, Arthur, is I have an absolutely firm belief, and I'm yet to see a baby for whom it's not true, that when we're born, we've got everything we need. We have unconditional love. We have an enormous basic supply of strengths and skills and capacities and character traits and things that will help us navigate through life. But it kind of gets trained out of us, either by our family context or our well-meaning parents. It certainly does by our education system. Do not get me started. And I think we lose connection with the essence of who we are. And sadly, I think it's particularly an issue for the Western world. You know, some of the happiest little people I've ever met in my life were the so-called plastic families in India. Families living under plastic whose basic survival needs were barely taken care of. But here's 2 little boys out the front kicking a plastic bottle up and down as if it's a soccer ball and they're at the World Cup. And the sheer experience of joy, because they've got so much to be grateful for. And here's our kids going, oh, I need the latest iPhone. All my friends have got it. And if I don't have it, dear God, really? So the practice of gratitude, the acknowledgement of what it is that we have and the appreciation of that, rather than the chase of more and more and more. And the other thing that I would say, my 5th strategy would be, don't fight problems. Face them. If I go back to here, in this space up here, in the elevated space, we embrace problems. Because what is life if it's not an opportunity to apply all of your skills and talents and character traits and resources and friendships and networks and all the rest of it to the journey of solving problems? Life is a journey of solving problems. So stay in that elevated space, turn toward the problem and go, hello, problem, what have you turned up to teach me? Or remind me, or remind me, as in put me back in the mind of, I was born to do this stuff. If we can embrace the problems, we can stay in that elevated energy. If we resist the problems or fight the problems, we just make the problems worse and we push ourselves down to that basal energy. And then we start to repel all of the opportunities and possibilities and people and resources and support and love and nurture that we actually need. We make it impossible for ourselves to receive that.
Yeah.
Does that help, Dom?
You did. I did, and brought another question, but that's good. Like, you know, I agree with, and I do a few things, like, as you just said that, like for me, praying is a meditation for me every day.
Great.
Even
Perfect.
with now, I just went in between and I just messaged and that I'll be back in a few minutes, but I did a quick one. But I do meditate, and and that is one of the way that really keeps me grounded and relaxed.
Yes.
I've personally noticed that happens for me. So I do that. And then obviously walking helps when you can, if there's no raining, but you know.
Walk in the rain. That's the most meditative of all.
Yeah. And then, like, there are things, but I really want, there are a few things obviously in life you keep learning. And obviously when you listen to these kind of things, it does give you that inspiration how to fix those kind of issues that we have. Like, I know one of my problem is, which I know, I acknowledge it, that it is there, that if things doesn't go really well the way, if I'm saying everything correctly and happening, if it doesn't happen, and the negative energy around me, it doesn't really sit well with me.
Yes.
So now you know that you're doing everything with the, like, in any, I won't just divide it between personal life or work life, everywhere. So I just feel to it that, you know, how the intent is good, everything is good, but why it has been compounded by the negativity. And so then it holds to me for a couple of days before I really now come out of it and then try to come in terms and then try to work around how to do it. Yeah. But I feel 2 days is a quiet, or a day or two is a long time to disturb my own body again.
Yes.
My own energies and everything. I know, but it happens. And I know it, but I just can't really work around that thing now.
Yeah, I get it. So that'll be connected to a limiting belief. That's what that'll be connected to, an expectation that everything that you do should be perfect or something of this nature. But I will give you what I call my 3 cheating strategies, if you're up for a little bit of cheating. This is your fast track solution, okay? So number 1 is what I said right at the beginning of this conversation. Ask why. Just stop yourself and say, why am I so stressed now? Why is this so important to me now? Why does this matter so much? And even if it starts off negative, it'll turn and go upward. So that's the first cheat sheet. The second point on the cheat sheet is taste your food and drink. Because very, very rarely do we in a Western world taste food and drink. We just guts it in because we have no time.
Yeah.
So whether you give a blessing for your food, our family, we're great ones for taking a moment to hang over the food and give a blessing and express gratitude. But whether you do that or not, set yourself a challenge to taste every mouthful of your tea. Sometimes, in fact, Anne gave me a beautiful gift. I received an award through the Global Women's Peace, a global award, and one of the gifts was, which get some at the Pacifica Festival if you get along to that, was a number of Samoan teas, and they're beautiful. They're just, it's like tasting the country. So, you know, whatever it is that works for you, do something that causes you to be so present in the moment of the consumption of that food or that drink. The third thing I mentioned before, which is plant your own feet. And by that, I don't mean go and dig a hole and plant your feet. What I mean is take your feet out into nature. We are great ones for putting shoes of some description or concrete between us and nature. It won't work. You cannot, well, you can, but you have to work so much harder to draw nature through concrete or to draw nature through a leather sole or even a synthetic sole. Take your shoes and socks off, even on a wet day, and go and rub your feet on the soil or the grass or something. Allow Mother Nature to de-electrify your system. And the fourth thing, which I do a lot, is breathing. very consciously breathing, stopping and just going. And I do what in yoga terms is called a 4-point breathing rhythm. So you breathe in as slowly as you can, you hold at the top of the breath, you breathe out as slowly as you can, and you hold at the bottom of the breath. If you do that even 4 or 5 breaths, your sympathetic nervous system goes, oh, thank you. Because when you're running around in parasympathetic nerve, which is your sort of fight or flight all of the time, you cannot settle, you cannot concentrate, and you cannot be as effective as you will be when you're in the more considered and rejuvenating sympathetic nervous activity. So those would be my cheat suggestions, Arfa. And the good thing is they are actually quick. And you have to eat anyway. So you might as well eat and taste every mouthful. One of my friends is a great believer in the digestive system is the center of your physical well-being. And so she chews her food 40 times before she swallows. It's a kind of one of her meditative things. That for me is a lot of chewing. But it's interesting how it slows you down. So sometimes when I'm really wound up about something, I'll just sit down and go, right, I'm going to do Mary's 40 chews. And it does. I can feel myself sort of dropping into my own body, into my own heart as I'm actually doing it. Great. Thank you, Arfa. I appreciate your question.
Thank you.
Nadia, did we solve your sound
Can
problem?
you hear me?
Yes. Yay. I can hear
I
you.
was like, I don't know what's going on. And then I realized my Bluetooth, it is
You were
causing
connected
issues.
to the speaker. Right.
Yeah,
got
I'm
it.
so sorry.
That's okay. No problem.
Thank you so much for having me and allowing me to attend this. This is a real treat and something I really needed. I didn't realize.
Well, on behalf of Yezhong, we'd like to say you're welcome.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Yejong is fantastic, honestly. She's so beyond anything I could ever imagine. She's amazing. I have so much love and respect for her. She's next
That's
level.
lovely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there we go.
I love you. No, yeah, but yay! So I love a lot of what you were saying about vulnerability and a lot of about what you were saying about sitting in that moment of pain and being friends with it.
Yes.
And then talking back to that voice that's self-limiting, that part of you that's wanting to hold you back and keeping you in that space. And you do, it's a delusional state to an extent, because it makes you believe that you're safe by not going into the pain, by not feeling the pain.
Absolutely.
But actually, it's not protecting you from anything. If anything, it's just prolonging that hurt, and it's keeping you, it's holding you hostage.
Yes.
And it's yourself holding you hostage.
Yes, which is even worse. Yes.
It's even worse. Yeah.
It's like 1,000 paper cuts for your heart.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. I love looking into stuff like that, because it's something that I didn't realize I did until a couple of years ago. And I was like, well, no wonder things aren't moving forward with me, because I've become so comfortable. And that's another thing. People become so comfortable with the pain, and they think that, oh, my life just amounts to this pain. Oh, I will just live with it.
Yeah, this is normal.
This is normal. I'm reduced to it. This is okay. When they're not sitting in their power, they are not, as you said, like in alignment.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciated that.
And very unlikely to be living in alignment with their own values.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
And if we're not, the road will be much rougher. In fact, the research tells us if you live out of alignment with your own values, there is one inevitable outcome, and that's addiction.
100%. 100%.
So whether it's addiction to drugs and alcohol, whether it's addiction to workaholism, whether it's addiction to exercise, whether it's addiction to gyms, whether it's addiction to super greens, for goodness sake, it's still an addiction.
It's still an addiction.
Yeah, if you can't go a day without it, there's a very good chance it's an addiction. I love the gym, but if I wake up and I'm having a really lovely snuggle in bed and I want to just pick up my book and read, I'm not addicted, I can assure you.
Yeah,
I will stay in bed.
Yeah, and that's power. That's, you have power over yourself.
Absolutely.
You're not doing anything out of compulsion.
Yes.
Have you heard of Dr. Gabor Mate?
Oh my goodness me, I'm in love with him. He has a beautiful
Am
wife and
I?
he's happily married, but I think he just got the wrong girl, frankly. But I think one of the things that he says, Nadia, which is, it was something that 30 years ago, again, Gabor Mate has been around forever. Just that somebody recently, because of the film, somebody made him famous. But one of the reasons that I became a really big fan of his work is because he said this: children are not traumatized by pain. They are traumatized by feeling alone with their pain. I'm going to say that again. Children are not traumatized by pain. They're traumatized by feeling alone with their pain. And if we individually reflect on the times where we've experienced trauma in our own lives, you know, I actually witnessed my grandmother trying to choke my mother to death when I was 7 years old. And it wasn't that incident. I mean, I came out and found her and thought, well, you can't kill my mum, picked up a toy and smacked my grandmother over the head, grabbed my mum and pulled her back into the house and closed the door. It was not that was traumatizing for me. What was traumatizing is that it was never spoken of again until I was an adult.
Wow. Yeah.
So my father never said, what happened with your grandmother today? My mum never said. She said when she recovered herself in the moment, she said, oh, thank you, sweetheart. Thank you so much. I love you, and started to cry. But it was never discussed again. And so I grew up believing that my job was literally to be responsible for everything. To the extreme, like the famine in Africa, sorry, my fault. The war in Ukraine, sorry, that'd be me. You know, literally, kind of ridiculous how much that the impact of the aftermath of the experience.
Yeah.
Because all that really happened was my grandmother was doing something stupid and evil, and I smacked her over the head.
Yeah.
My mum, that's okay. All good. The trauma was I felt completely alone with my own experience of that.
Yeah.
In fact, I was recently talking to a girlfriend about another experience. My very big, strong, incredibly healthy, barely sick a day in his life father fell down some stairs about 6.5 years ago and broke his neck in 3 places. He was on life support for a week, and then we decided to turn the life support off. And my mum and I sat with him while he died. And I was talking to someone, I'd been reading a book, and it came up for me again. And I was talking to this girlfriend and saying, you know, I've never told anyone my story of sitting by my dad while he died. Because the big story on that day was how to support my mum to cope. No?
Wow, yeah.
Such power in our willingness and our ability to tell our stories. And I can't think who it was. I'm inclined to say Margaret Mead, but it doesn't sound like her, but someone famous once said that there's no one we can't love once we know their story.
I love that.
Yeah, I know, right?
I love that.
Tell your stories, ladies. Maybe, Arfa, maybe that's another answer to your question, is I make sure I'm telling my stories, even if it's only to myself. Sometimes I'm sure that my neighbours think I'm the crazy lady, not just because I sing to my plants, but because when I go walking, I talk to myself. A girlfriend of mine has, what do you call these things that the same as
AirPod.
What is it?
AirPod?
Yeah, an AirPod. Like that's the one without the lead, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so sometimes she does it. She talks out loud to herself when she walks, but she sticks one of those in so people think she's talking to someone, so they don't think whatever gets you through, you know.
Of course.
I think, just adding to what you just said, it's a good suggestion. we do talk to ourselves. Let's be very honest. We do that.
Yeah.
We, all of us do that. And that is one of the moments that we self-reflect, all of us, just self-reflect on what we're doing, praising ourselves or guilting ourselves or whatever we do that.
More often than not, judging ourselves or berating ourselves for not being perfect. Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Oh,
definitely.
yeah.
You're spot on.
Yeah.
But I think Nadia also, we all echo with this thing that how things we just keep to ourselves and keep, I know, and we all know it, it's not good for our soul and our bodies and our energies. It's not really good. How to really break into that thing, that is always a good thing. Yes, talking to oneself and sharing. And then probably sometime you just talk to people that who we pick and choose people. This is also thing.
Yeah.
And that is also something really interesting.
Yeah, look, that's a profound reminder, I think, Alpha, and it's really good for us to reframe that. We've just run one of our children's programs for a couple of weeks ago, and I said to the kids, emotions are like M&Ms, they're better shared. Emotions are like lollies, M&Ms, choose whatever. Emotions are like cake, like choose your poison, I don't mind. But emotions are like the things that we love, they're just better shared. If you sit down and go into a sponge cake by yourself, it's like, it's a bit boring. But if you take that sponge cake to your neighbours and sit down and have a cup of tea with him or her, then you're like, oh, isn't this nice?
Yeah.
And you share it. Emotions are the same. The problem in our culture is that we've divided emotions largely into two baskets. Good, bad. I can tell you now, many wonderful things have been achieved in this world from my efforts because I've been angry about something.
Yeah.
I was angry about the way people treated one another after we were let out of lockdown. I was angry about that. And I challenged people who were ridiculing one another. And, someone with a mask on would think they were high and mighty and criticize someone without a mask. I'm the one stepping in going, whatever happened to peace, love, and mung beans people?
Right.
So I do think that there's something powerful there for us to reflect on about what if all emotions were okay, they were just emotions. In fact, we teach the kids emotions are just signposts. Emotions are just signposts. And if you were driving down the street and it said caution falling rocks, you wouldn't go, I don't want that signpost there, I'm going to get out and beat up the signpost. You take the signpost for the message it portrays. Drive forward with extra care because there could be fallen rocks. So what if your sadness is just a signpost? What if your anger is just a signpost? What if your shame is just a signpost? For those of you who are interested, go and jump on YouTube and search Brene Brown, as in Renee, but with a B, Brene Brown shame. Actually, I think it might be a Super Soul Sunday thing, but anyway, it'll come up on YouTube. And she talks a lot about the fact that you can't ignore shame. You have to go through it. It's the mud between you and the cake. You have to go through it to get the cake.
Yeah.
But most of us hide from our shame. We don't want to face it. Yeah. Nadia, did you have any other question, doll? I sort of cut you off because I went off over there.
No, that's okay. I'm enjoying listening to you. I'm more interested in what you have to say, but I like the idea of because I think Arfa said something about being stuck in that compulsive thinking and the narrative that we keep playing to ourselves, and I immediately thought, well, something you said, Heather, might be a really good strategy for her, which is actually going out into nature. And as you said, we have everything available to us that we need in order to heal. We just have to be aware of that and turn our consciousness to it. So I think nature is incredibly healing. And being barefoot on the sand, on the ground, I think is healing as well, when you know what you're doing. Because Mother Nature, I mean, what does a mother do? It nurtures, doesn't it? It protects. A mother gives life.
Yeah.
So remember, we are literally sitting in the lap of a mother all the time. We are always protected. We just need to be aware of that.
Yes,
Oh
absolutely.
yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, there's a couple of other things that I would say. I have a couple of questions that I find quite helpful of myself, but I also ask it of our team and our consulting clients. And, you know, I have three, well, I just sold one. I now have two companies, but I used to have three companies, and everyone asks this same question. When things get tough, we ask ourselves, what if this is perfect? What if this is perfect?
Okay.
And the reason I ask that question is because immediately your mind goes kind of sideways. It runs off tracking it. What do you mean perfect?
What do you mean? Yeah.
Yeah. And so suddenly you're working with a mind that is open and curious.
Yeah.
Instead of closed and foveal, you're like, perfect, what? So something will go wrong and the team will be like, And I went, yeah, no, that's a problem. I hear you. And thank you for sharing that with me. You seem very clear about your feelings about this situation. Let me ask you this. What if everything was perfect? Oh, it disrupts the path of your thinking so that it makes other possibilities emerge. It's what we call a hope promoting question. But hope is in our world is an acronym for helping other possibilities emerge.
Oh,
so
okay.
Hope is about helping other possibilities emerge. I want to do hope with you because I want to help other possibilities emerge.
Right.
Asking the question, what if this situation was perfect? So I know Anne was a little like, oh, you know, it's 7:10 and no one's come on. And I'm like, Anne, what if this is perfect? I mean, I didn't actually say it. I was just thinking in my head, what if this was perfect? Well, it gives me more time to hang out with Anne. It gave Arthur time to cook the dinner for a friend before we had to launch into, you know, what is perfect? I have nothing else to do after this because I already had my vegetables. So, you know, if we go to 8:30, it doesn't matter. I have no clue what time is. Oh my God, I need to be quiet and let you go and have lives. But the second thing that I would say is this. If you know that you're in a pattern, you seem to be connected to a certain way of showing up in the world, ask yourself this question. I warn you in advance, it will make you want to slap your own face.
Okay.
Ask yourself the question, what is the advantage of me doing this? Because by and large, you will not keep doing it unless there's some advantage. What is the advantage of me doing this? So I keep saying yes to things when I want to say no, or I keep being the only one to deliver meals to the sick and homeless, or I keep doing, I'm just so sick of it. Well, what are the advantages? When I was a therapist, a clinical therapist, a lot of people used to come to me and say, oh, I've been depressed for years. And I would say, good for you. That's great. And they'd say, what? No, I said I've been depressed for years. And I said, yeah, well, that's great. I'm really proud of you. Well done. And they'd look at me like I was a little bit crazy. And I said, well, you would only keep doing it if you were getting something out of it. So what are the advantages?
Wow.
Which usually made them want to do that to me.
Yeah.
But it's true, right? Yeah. So they're two little tricks. Now, I've got a feeling, now that I've just looked at the clock, I've got a feeling that I need to wind up, but there's a couple of other things I'd like to share with you. Firstly, thank you. Thank you all for your reflections and your questions. Anne has my contact details if you want to connect at another time. I think we're actually finally locking in a time. So we'll chat Friday. But I just wanted to share this with you. If it doesn't have love, don't do it. One way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it, if it doesn't have love, bring it.
I love that. I love that so much.
If I could hashtag a t-shirt for you ladies, it would be, if it doesn't have love, bring it. Be the source of it. The other thing that I would like to say is a massive thank you. We are partners in B1G1 or Buy One, Give One, which is an international giving movement that supports all sorts of different projects all over the world. There's about 8,000 or 9,000 businesses involved in this. And as a way of saying thank you for you all taking the time to join us here tonight, because, you know, there's 100 other things you could have been doing. Our team has given 1,000 days of access to toilets for families in Cambodia. So that's just our little way of saying from our hearts to yours, thank you to Anne for the opportunity, and thank you to each and every one of you for coming along and joining us here tonight. I am very grateful that you have chosen to be with us. And that's me when I'm on the couch and not looking like I got dragged backwards through a bush because I've just had so thank you, ladies. I have very much appreciated your energy and your contribution and your questions and just your presence here tonight. And I thank you for that. And I will hand back to Anne to close us out.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm always so inspired by you, and we've got lots of good tips to think about and work through. So I will end recording.